when we're running for office. Those things are just put in the closet. What do you make of this tour that they're making around America, reviving this idea of poverty and bringing it to the forefront?
I don't know a great deal about that because I spend most of my time on this book, and I only point it out because this is proof that this is
well
very well worn. I think I would say overall that having spent so much time on trying to understand the world that we have inherited overall, that I have so much more faith in individual decisions of the people. I actually believe that if people could be empowered and recognize their own power, I think we've seceded too much of our power. And the idea that we have it within us, I really truly believe this is my personal belief on the basis of this, that our higher selves can find answers that often leaders cannot. And I would, this book is an appeal for all of us to recognize our higher selves and to recognize that we are so interdependent upon others who are Americans. And that we are so interdependent because we all in some ways have a common bond that goes far beyond what we think. We have so much more in common than we've been led to believe that we have. And that we can only be a great nation and a great state, a great region, when we recognize that we are not separate and apart from these people. When we talk about the people who are in prison, those people who are imprisoned at such high rates, many of them are in jail for non-violent offenses. They're in jail for non-violent offenses. There's a great book called The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander, which examines this, and she would be so much better at describing the reality of this. But one of the realities is this: they're going to get out. They're going to get out. And then what are we returning to the community?
Well, the reality is we are paying for it today.
We're paying for it today, and we'll pay for it in the future when they get out and cannot find jobs. And you have 30% of
because once you're branded, an ex-convict, your life automatically changes. Your opportunity is not the same as the next person.
Let me just pile onto this leadership issue. I do think individual people have the power to make changes among themselves. And one of the inspirations of this brilliant book is this leaderless migration, choice by choice. One brother leaves and one brother stays. One person goes and stays, and families are split up, but it's all for this opportunity that's up north. It's a very powerful set of stories. At the same time, leaders matter. You matter when you're leading. And if in the 21st century, as we think about the evolution of the civil rights movement and where we have to go, economic justice is synonymous with racial justice and educational justice and social justice. So if you're going to talk about social justice, you have to be able to talk about the economics. I'll give you just one example, and then I guess we need to stop. But my son, who just graduated from Duke University when he was in high school, went to a diversity conference in Seattle. And he came back and I said, "Son, what did they teach you?" He said, "Dad, it was an unbelievable experience." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "They lined us all up against this wall over here. Black, white, Asian, otherwise. And they said, take a step forward if your mother graduated from college." And I took a step forward. And they said, take a step forward if your father's at home. And I took a step forward. And they said, take a step forward if your family has 2 cars and lives in a standalone house. And he took a step forward. He said, take a step forward if your mother has a graduate degree. And he took another step forward, etc., as he's taken these steps forward. And they also had questions that would take a step back. Any close relative, aunts, uncles, cousins in jail, take a step backwards. Anybody in your family have a drug problem or an alcohol problem, take a step backwards. Anybody in your family doesn't have a family physician, take a step backwards, and so forth like that. And then he said, at the end, we were all spread out by then. And he said, frankly, I was way out in front, Dad. It was real. I was proud of myself. I was way out in front. I was almost to the other wall. I almost had two steps to get to the other wall over there. And the man said, he said, you know what's on that wall? He said, that's a good education and a good job. Now, with this nice level playing field, everybody run for the wall. He said, well, I was already there. And I looked behind me, and the black kids were back here. The Hispanic kids were maybe a third of the way up, and all the white kids were up here. That's the, quote, level playing field if nobody makes any adjustments. If nobody says we're going to take care of all of our children, not just some of our children.
We do have time for some questions, AV, if you'd like to come up and moderate some of that. There's a microphone at the audience.
Thank you. All right. One hand already.
I'm wondering, what is the approach of our state superintendent of education toward contributing to some of the problems that some of the solutions you have suggested?
Well, the current state superintendent of education is not contributing to solutions.
I didn't think so.
In the past, at least the Education Oversight Committee, along with the Tenenbaum administration and the Rex administration, did collect an immense amount of data, which is extraordinarily useful, and absolutely points to where the resources should be given in the state of South Carolina. And both of those administrations, along with the Education Oversight Committee, went to the legislature and said, the difference between what you are funding and the difference between what you are funding and an adequate education, even minimally adequate education, is about $600 million as of 4 years ago. Now, you can't come up with that money overnight, but you can begin to make a dent by moving money where it belongs. There's all kinds of ways that the states have figured out how to do this and how to have a fairer tax system. Lee County, I'll just give you one example. Lee County went to build a high school. High school at that time cost $25 million. $25 million was the total assessed tax base of Lee County. So if you sold the whole county for the assessed base, you could build a high school, right? So you have to help Lee County build a high school if you're going to have Lee County in South Carolina. That's just part of what we have to do. But there are a lot of ways to deal with it.
All right. We have a lady back here. Okay, the microphone's coming.